going to try to keep this video short because I'm going to be talking about my ideal version of Bionicle 2015, and it is what you see on screen here. We're going to start this video just focusing on the first wave of 2016. You will note that there are a lot more pieces, notably masks. There is a complete mask collection here this time around. The way that that is introduced is actually through the protectors. LEGO did not name these protectors, and while that kind of felt like a mistake on LEGO's part, they obviously did retcon it later, give us names later, but it was after they hit store shelves. Too little too late, right? Ultimately, I actually think you could play into the fact these characters didn't have names by writing it into the story. Maybe the Toa, for example, have to prove themselves by picking the one fire villager of the hundreds of fire villagers in the fire village that is the true protector. And then if the Toa chooses right, it shows that he's the chosen one, whatever, you know, and then the protector reveals himself, gives his identity, and that's when we get the name in the story. So the story can almost, or the name can almost be a mystery. Something that 2015 lacked quite a bit was a bit of world building and a bit of mystery. So by having these random masks in this box, the idea being that each protector does not come with a full set of 6 masks, but comes with 2 to 3. Ideally 3. These are $10 sets. Of course, LEGO would probably be a little bit more skimpy on that, but I look at it as a sort of wager, right? We give less masks and people will have to buy more in order to get all of the masks that they want, but that encourages redundancy, which doesn't always feel good and can sort of sour people on your product. However, you spend a little bit more money, you include that third mask, and people have more masks now in their collection to potentially trade. They still don't have them all, and because the masks would be randomized, there's no guarantee which mask they'll get. There's no duplicates in a set, and there's no elemental mask in a set. You'll notice Tahu's fire mask is not pictured here because this character can never come with Tahu's mask, making Tahu's mask exclusive to Tahu. You get that idea, right? And if LEGO did do 3 masks, then they can guarantee it always comes with a protector mask, but then the other 2 masks are one of these 5. Anyway, you get the idea. You're smart enough to understand kind of what I'm getting at here, right? Ultimately, I think this is actually really beneficial for a number of reasons. Yes, LEGO would be investing more in including these masks in the packages, but remember, this is the resurgence of Bionicle. This is where the hype is the highest, right? This is where people are going to be going online on forums and trying to be talking about this brand new product while it's live on store shelves, while they are the first to have it. So of course you're going to want to put these out there for people to trade. Trading is, if nothing else, word of mouth advertising, right? It's one of the main reasons why Pokemon was so damn successful in its early days. It was a phenomenon for more than just a world with animal creatures in it, you know? And it's also worth noting, too, that you'll see that these protectors no longer have any skull spiders in them, which means that all of the masks that the master sets come with are exclusive to the master sets. The skull spider, the gold mask, and the character's mask. So you get a little bit of value, a little bit more value even, out of the master characters. But to replace that, since there's no battle in a box here, what I did instead was I included this. Now, I've made an entire video on what this is. Here, it's just a blank little folded piece of vinyl, essentially. It's realistically just some Lego plates that I stacked together. But what this does, what this represents, is a vinyl sheet that I've actually made a video on. I'm going to link it at the end of this video. It comes with these characters. It's folded in half, and on the top half of that sheet there are some little punch outs with the different masks from that character on it, like 3 punch outs or whatever. And these punch outs, because you can collect those little pieces of vinyl, throw them away if you want to, whatever, but they leave those holes behind that you can then use your stud shooter to shoot through, and then you can value them as points. The bottom half of this vinyl sheet here can be like a little game board, right? The set comes with 13 studs. It's enough pieces to have an extra piece laying around. There are obviously other extra pieces in these sets too, so ultimately you can have another piece to kind of roll around this game board. Hell, if you make the game simple enough, you could even have 2 side-by-side game boards. Basically, you race your opponent, and again, that helps to advertise to siblings, right? Because that's who you'd very likely be playing that game with. Ultimately, the idea is just to get other people encouraged to play and interact with these sets along with the person who bought them. Ultimately, trying to get more people to buy, right? And then when you flip this over, on the back side, there is a mask checklist, and it's not actually a folded piece of vinyl just like this. There's actually a little bit of extra thing to it. It's not pictured here. Again, separate video on this whole concept. I'll link it at the end of this one, but it is actually a little clip that you can use to display any singular mask that you want, including maybe the gold masks, right? And because these are printed, you can have one for each flavor of protector here, which I think is pretty cool. ultimately. Moving on from that, since we have now introduced the concept of more than just 6 protectors, I also went ahead and designed some alternate builds for each of the protectors that you saw. Now, it's worth noting that some of these definitely stretch the parts a little bit from each of those sets, but these are true alternate models. This is just a model made from the fire protector, right? That's it. There's nobody else included in this. The water protector here, of course, recolors again because I chose to recolor a few pieces for my own taste. We'll get to those in a moment. Now, moving on from this, I did want to go ahead and highlight this. This is not my design here, so if you recognize this, this is actually a design from a user online named Tymbal. No idea if they're still active, by the way, but they created a handful of lovely combination models for the original Toa Masters and Protectors, and even some of the Skull Villain characters back in like 2015, 2016, somewhere around there. And they looked absolutely wonderful, so why not include things like that as well? What do combination models do? They incentivize you to buy more. And while the adrenaline mode is definitely something, it's not enough, in my opinion, to incentivize the buyer of, the Toa of Jungle or whatever, Master of Jungle, to then want to go out of their way to buy the Protector of Jungle. So in this case here, this is just a combination of, in fact, the Master of Jungle and Protector of Jungle, but there are some of these creatures. I'll do a separate review on them because I actually have built them as well. But there are 4 creatures designed by this mock creator, 2 of which are just combinations between the Masters and their respective Protector, while the other 2 are the Master, Protector, and their respective Skull Villain character. They're all great. Again, video coming on that. Now, moving on from there, you will see that the Master sets are basically unchanged except for, again, color. I did go ahead and introduce some other colors. You'll note that I took away the gold. That might be controversial, but I actually don't hate it. I really quite like the way that Kopaka looks with the gunmetal here. And it helps to give a little bit of speciality back to the gold color for a character like a Kimu or elsewhere, right? And ultimately, yes, while the gunmetal is a bit of a boring color, by replacing the transparent bones on Kopaka with the medium azure color, which looks absolutely incredible with white, by the way, you should really try it. I think it helps to further the combination of colors here. Because that's a more vibrant color than the trans light blue, it ends up ultimately working to kind of bounce off of rather the gunmetal color on him. Gunmetal also on Onua. I don't think it's strictly necessary. Obviously, Onua comes with an exclusive recolor of armor piece here in silver, so that might be something you want. That's fine. Whichever character you decide to have silver on, like I chose Lewa here because I really quite love the silver and the bright green and Keith orange all work together and play off each other very well. But you could play around with your, coordination and color choices here. There are 5 characters here that are gunmetal and 1 that's silver. You could definitely have another one, right? Bohatu here, utilizing the gunmetal, which I think he looks absolutely wonderful with gunmetal. My version, of course, also uses dark gray. Here, I just stuck with gunmetal, though. No dark bluish gray on him outside of just your standard expected pieces, right? So no shells or anything like that. But still, fantastic looking set otherwise. And I also changed, this is just a me thing, you may or may not like this, and it's something I will definitely test in the future, but the bones on him from trans neon green to trans yellow. Ideally, I would go for a transfluorescent yellow, but that's not a color that LEGO currently produces anymore. But I quite like the yellow with the dark orange. And while yes, the trans lime green looks pretty cool with dark orange, it feels a lot more out of place than the other color combinations. Moving on from there, Lewa is basically unchanged, minus of course his weapons being changed over. Galley, it's just kind of strange that he gets gunmetal weapons and Galley gets silver. Galley also looks absolutely wonderful with gunmetal. You can kind of see all the rest of the changes. I don't need to keep explaining. And actually, Tahu looks really sick with the gunmetal. I did not expect to like that as much as I do. But ultimately, you'll see that we have skull spiders here in 6 colors now. Is it necessary? No, absolutely not. If LEGO really wanted to cut budget and just wanted to do 3 colors here or even 2 colors here, honestly, I wouldn't mind that much if it ultimately meant getting all of these instead. So you will note we still get the original 6 masks. Yes, some of these masks are placeholders because I just don't have the models for them in studio currently. Shout out, by the way, to Tammy Calamity and their digital construction collection, because that's actually where I picked these up from. You can find their YouTube channel. I would highly recommend checking them out. Anyway, wonderful creator. But you'll also see that we have 6 unique colors of Skull Spider, including tan, dark red, purple, of course, dark blue, the spring yellowish green, just lovely color for that. And then standard green, which is an interesting one. I'll get back to why I included standard green in this in a moment. You'll also see we have a standard green version of Lewa's mask rather than bright green. Why? Okay, so now we have the Lord of Skull Spiders. One of my biggest critiques on this was that it just didn't feel Rahi enough. Like, if that makes sense. A lot of the CCBS felt tacked on, and for what it's worth, this is still very similar to that version, so it has not actually changed that much. But one of my other critiques was that it was just kind of dull. You had this opportunity to create a character that used very few CCBS pieces that could have been a unique color in much the same way as the original Rahi were, and instead LEGO chose black, which made it feel kind of boring, alongside the fact that the build felt a little disjointed. So I actually lowered the attachments in the back here as well. They're not attached very properly here, but I've actually made a version of Lord of Skull Spiders that utilizes a better version of a handle than this that's a little bit closer to the build. Ultimately, though, the green Lewa mask here, as well as the green torso armor and the green 4-length shell, you will note are all of the same shell pieces used on Lewa here, but in bright green. The idea here being that it gives you the ability to build Lewa in his classic color scheme. It's not a necessary thing to do, but if I'm going to recolor this anyway, and I do like the green, why not? You know, if he's going to have a mask, I could do the Skull Spider mask here, sure, and he is going to have the gold one anyway, right? But why not introduce something different? And this is something I actually carry forward as well with Pohatu's original color scheme with brown instead of the dark orange. And in fact, we'll get to those in a moment. For the polybag, you have the trans orange Tahu mask here. That's actually going to play another effect here in a few, as well as a scorpion this time around, but dark red, making that one exclusive technically, even though, yes, the mask is the same as Lewa's, just fine there. So in terms of old parts that are already introduced in 2015, minus the eye stalk, which is technically introduced in the second wave in orange, and this being trans lime green, not trans yellow, these are the recolors I introduced. LEGO actually does make this armor piece in black. I do not remember if that came in 2015 or 2016, however. LEGO also makes these 2 feet pieces. So if you exclude those, not a crazy amount of recolors in order to make this work. But really, the recolors are these, right? This is a lot of recolors, which is why I think that introducing them in the protectors instead of their own individual mask packs may actually be a smarter idea. Mask packs are not out of the question by any means, but there is some separate logistics to solve for with stuff like that. And ultimately, by playing up the fact that we don't know who these characters are. We don't know if these are the real protectors. Maybe one's fake. Maybe whatever. Are Toa going to decide the real protectors? Are they going to pass this test? Whatever. You know, it gives a little bit of intrigue, a little bit of mystery, because this is just the first wave. This creature right here is not intimidating enough. These skull spiders are not intimidating enough. So adding to the story by having other creatures, like the combination here, like the combination of another bird I have not built in studio yet, but do have built in real life, help to build that world and fill it out a bit more, and also ultimately give you a little bit of mystery to hold you over until that second wave, right? Then the second wave comes around, and again, mostly unchanged. You will note that the Skull Scorpion now uses the trans yellow instead of the trans neon green. It is worth noting that I'm going to still keep the trans neon green for 2016, meaning Umarak the Destroyer and other characters like that will be using it, so we'll still get this shell in that color. You don't have to worry about that, but trans yellow still is a wonderful color. There's specifically one CCBS shell that comes in that color, by the way, and it's a glorious one, but it's unfortunate that there's only one. So you'll also note that my build for Skull Shaman is now included in here as well, and you will see that I've made all of the masks solid transparent rather than the blended. I do not hate the blended for what it's worth, and if LEGO even wanted to do the marbled versions of these with the gold and the transparent color, I think that's actually something they could do for like a Comic-Con, a giveaway type thing, right? Or maybe even a random chance in these sets, you could have one that has the blend instead of the solid color. A cool little idea, even if I don't think it's strictly necessary, or you could introduce both, whatever the case may be. And it is worth noting that LEGO could also give some of these away for like Comic-Cons and things like that as well, or in other events at LEGO stores. Again, further incentivizing people to go out of their way to try to learn about and buy these sets, right? You will also notice now we have some more animals, some more world building. I have not built, I've already mentioned this multiple times in the video, the other 3 Tymbal creations. I plan to create some of my own. I also have created some of my own combinations as well. And it's also worth noting too that these are my own creations here, but you will notice that these all, the idea is that these would be sold together in a single set, kind of like a master builder set, but a little different. This isn't something where it's like, oh, you only get like this many pieces and you can build one of 15. No, the idea here is that you can build all 5 and it's like a creature pack, right? This is of course before like the creatures from 2016, of course, so they have a different aesthetic overall, but then you make those creatures like legendary or whatever the case may be, and I think all of that works. And you'll notice that all of these colors with me, I mean, sand blue has a little bit of support in CCBS. Yellow has a ton of support thanks to the Evo sets from Hero Factory. Standard blue from Surge, of course, has a decent amount of support. Purple doesn't have a crazy amount of support, but it's not awful. There's a torso armor, there's a handful of shells, there's some armor add-ons in purple, so it's not terrible. And even brown has some CCBS support. So this is just giving a little extra CCBS support, and you'll notice the masks I chose because, of course, why not give a shout out to the original McDonald's Matoran, which is why I chose green for Lewa's mask here. I know it is not dark turquoise. I understand that that's not the color of Kongu's mask, but not everything here is a 1-to-1 recolor. Obviously, we don't have classic purple anymore, so the new purple works just fine. Orange would also work if you wanted to build new Paru instead, right? But ultimately, I think this ends up doing a pretty good job of giving us some masks like the How, like the Akaku in Sand Blue for other characters. Maku obviously doesn't wear this mask, right? The Mask of Water, but it works. You know, it's reasonable enough that you can kind of play around with it, build your characters, but they can be anybody you want. And again, because this bird is using all of the pieces that the Pohatu set uses in brown, minus 1 shell, because I actually added a 3-length shell to Pohatu in dark orange to give it another shell in that color, because we just don't have enough shells in that color, honestly. But there are other sets that had 3-length brown shells that came out around this time as well. So ultimately, I don't think it's strictly necessary to introduce here. It's not to say you'll get enough pieces to build Pohatu in brown by buying one of these. But again, little things, little giveaways, little this, that, the other, whatever. If LEGO wanted to introduce parts like these in other things, they absolutely can. So, moving on from here, you'll see in terms of the masks that come out for this wave, we have a Kimu's mask in gold, right? So the gold protector mask finally revealed here. We also have the skull masks, of course, right? I'm using these for Skull Basher in this case instead of for Onua. It is the same mask in both cases here, but I'm just representing those, right? So in this case, these 3 are all brand new, and these 4. You will note in the first wave, I did not introduce any metallic colors for the Skull Spiders. Not strictly necessary by any means, but it gives a little bit of extra value to something like Skull Slicer, right? Which otherwise felt kind of cheap. I'm going to be honest, that was a bad choice that LEGO made there, because a recolor of that mask would not have cost them that much, but they wanted to scrape every penny from the bottom of the barrel. It was terrible as an idea. In terms of recolors or added colors, we have this weapon here in tan, which is pretty cool recolor, if I may say so myself. We don't have a crazy amount of weapons in Generation 1 Bionicle in tan, so I think this is a pretty decent one to get our hands on. It's not necessary to get it in that color. These could just as easily be silver. I would not complain if they were, but they actually look really nice in that tan, and they have a sort of feather-like appearance that works quite well for this Vulture-esque character. And also, it's worth noting that all of these, with the exception of the turtle, also have functions built into them as well, but I digress. Moving off of that, you will see we have this armor add-on in Sand Blue that actually exists from LEGO in Sand Blue, but it's printed. So this is an unprinted version. This here in gold is no longer in that first wave, you will see. So we now get it in the second wave, making it a little more special because it's coming with Ikimu's set in this case. This in Sand Blue, don't believe that exists in that color, but maybe. I know there's a piece that's similar to it that I think does exist in that color. I don't think it was out around 2015 though, ultimately. So this here in brown, we actually have this in dark brown, but I don't think we have it in standard brown. The bone literal bone piece in gunmetal, and that's basically it. Those are your recolors there, and then of course this in that trans yellow color because it's just a replacement for the trans neon green, not technically a recolor. It's a filler. So ultimately, I think that's a pretty good idea, and you'll notice that since we have 5 transparent masks here, that trans orange Tahoe mask now makes a little more sense in the poly bag, right? It always felt very weird to me that we didn't get one for Tahoe and we didn't get one for Gali, but of course we did, kind of. We got the trans orange one in the poly bag and we got the trans blue one because Lego did a stupid thing with the stupid thing. Anyway, yes, also there is of course the trans clear version, which I have not included here. Ultimately, there are little things that I think could absolutely be changed about this. Nevertheless, I still think this is a really interesting and fun concept that builds just little increments one at a time into this. I didn't even change the build for Skull Scorpio here, which I absolutely want to, but I left it as is for now because I think at the very least, if you do something a little bit closer to this, relying a little more heavily on the recolors, it's a little better. Even though ultimately I think the legs need one axis of articulation at least. Anyway, that's going to be it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to subscribe. I will throw this file over on the Discord if I'm able. It's a pretty large file, so I may not be able to in one piece. However, I can also just upload it to the Google Drive, and I guess I'll just upload that to, Discord anyway. All right, so if you want to check out the Discord, link for that is down in the description below. You can also check out the Patreon if you want to help support the channel and what it is I do here. Instagram is down there as well. And be sure to subscribe once again. And remember, I also mentioned that the video talking about my idea for these mask packs will be linked. If it is still on the channel, I will link it at the end of the video, so you should see that on screen right about now, if not already. Anyway, take care.